I never did drugs because I just, I didn't want to buy them. And also, I just knew that they were probably really good, you know? And because I saw what was happening, and I just instinctively, there was a fear, because I knew that if I did them, what would make me any different? Yeah. And then you lose your note. It just goes away, you know, because that becomes more important. So I actually never did cocaine or any hard drugs like that. I drank a little bit, you know, smoked a little weed. I didn't even smoke weed back then, you know, but that was like teenage years, and
well,
so anyway.
Yeah.
So then there was the sex. I was in a relationship, and I was, you know, I've been monogamous for like 30 years, you know, and because that's addictive too. And there was a period in the early days where, you know, I was more promiscuous, and then it's like you start seeing people as sex objects. Then, you know, you don't see people. So I was lucky. I bypassed that, and I was never really. Money was great, but I never had taste for really expensive, crazy things. It was always gear. I drive the same car I drove in 1986. You know, because I like it. You know, and but buying studio gear, that was my. You know, I spent on that. And as far as the one thing that did get me, that came in the back door, was the ego, because when all of a sudden you're on the cover of all the magazines, and you're even being retired from winning any more awards because you won too many, and everybody's telling you you're great. In the beginning, I'm scratching my head thinking, I'm not that great. This is crazy. I don't know what these people are talking about. And people would come up to me and say things like, oh, you know, you're great, or you changed my life, and I'd say thank you, but I'd be that crazy. Because you don't know what's going on. You just kind of keep doing what you're doing, and in some respects, you still feel like you're 18 and you're or 15 and you're still practicing your scales and stuff, and nobody cares what you're doing. But then, after a while, you can't help it. You just start thinking, yes, I'm great. And then that perpetuates itself. When you tied for overall best guitar player with Jimmy Page, my hero, and I'm looking at this, and at first it's like a shock, but then you start thinking, yeah, that's me, the great one, you know, and you start creating this identity for yourself as being the great one, and eventually, as always, these things collapse because things change. I mean, in the 90s when the whole scene changed, I could not pick up a magazine and not read total hate mail about me. Every magazine, you know. And then people didn't want to be associated with you because he's that shred guy, or whatever it is. So this creates suffering when you think you're so great and all of a sudden you're, you know. But still, luckily for me, and this is something I just want to really get through, because it's so important. The thing that cut right through that was still a good idea. When something came up, and you know, maybe it went da 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 da, or maybe it went, you know, whatever, some weird stuff that I do, that made everything go away, and that was the. And I just kept making music, kept making it. It didn't matter. It was like. Because that was the most important thing.
The balance thing, though, is interesting. As I know early on, you moved outside of Hollywood. You didn't want to live right in Hollywood. You moved out. You're a family man. You know, you're married. You've got kids. I met your son Fire tonight. I believe you raise. I don't know if that's a word. I believe you keep bees.
Yeah.
That's trippy.
Yeah, trippy.
You know, so how important it is to counterbalance the madness of doing music with other things on the human level? Is that important to you?
Well, madness is in your head. The things that you would do, that you can do on the human level, you can bring madness to them.
Oh, cool.
And you can be the biggest rock star in the world, or respected musician, and find balance in that, or bring madness to it. There's no difference to me. If you recognize that you can control where your attention goes, you can learn how to live a very peaceful life. Because the only thing that causes stress in your life is when your attention goes into stressful thoughts. If you have madness in you, you will bring it to anything that you do.
And I read a quote from you, you said, and you can only do one thing at a time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's an old Yiddish saying, and I have to paraphrase, and I'm not Yiddish, but you can only put your ass on one horse. Or you can't put your ass on two horses or something like that.
Do ideas come to you when you are doing other things, like I mean, especially as a composer? Do musical things come to you when you are least expecting them, or when you in another motif?
Yeah, they can. Yeah. This is a great thing for you to try, and this is what I like to do. It's very creative, but the results are only going to be based on your excitement or your acceptance, your faith, so to speak. So sometimes an idea, you all know, sometimes an inspiration just comes, and you get this aha moment. You all know unique inspiration because it gives you a feeling of enthusiasm. You know the feeling of enthusiasm. Yeah, And where did that come from? An idea just arose, And that's inspiration. And that's delicious. That feeling of inspiration when it comes, it's like if you smell a flower, like a rose or something, that moment that you're breathing it in, and it just has that sort of intoxication to it, and it fills you up, and you're not thinking, oh, I think I want to pick this rose. Oh, I remember my aunt had a rose bush like this. You're just in the moment of it. That's how inspiration comes. It's the only way it can come. Otherwise, you're building ideas with your intellect, which usually doesn't really have any fresh, new, unique energy to it. And everybody is capable. That's what we're here for. Creative, on a fresh, unique level, everybody is capable of that. Things can come at any time, yeah. But a great thing to do is to put out parameters. Tell yourself, okay, what would I like? What would I like to do? What would I like? Now, in that moment that you're asking yourself, what would you like? Do you see a little voice that comes in and says, yeah, but you can't because you're not good enough, you don't have the time, you don't have the money, you don't know the right people, you have all these other responsibilities, okay? That's the little voice that cuts at the root of your inspiration. Okay. Can you recognize that voice when it comes in? That's the insecurities of the ego. Can you put it on hold for a minute and allow yourself to enjoy the process of thinking of something? Even if you don't know, even if the idea isn't there. For instance, when I was doing, I told you the story about the still small voice, which was the piece I wrote with the one note. I know it sounds kooky, but to me it was like, when the idea came to me, my knees got weak, because I just heard the whole thing unfolded in that much time. And then it took 5 months to compose it. So I put out, I even wrote, you could write down, I want something that's, maybe some of you, I want something uber intense, really heavy. I don't want to just tune my 7-string down. I want something different that sounds intense, cool, energy. You fill in the blank, fill in your own blank. And then ask yourself, how do I feel about that idea? Maybe the inspiration didn't even come yet, but how do I feel about it? Am I excited about it going to come, or am I thinking, this is bullshit? Steve Vai doesn't know what he's talking about. By the way, these aren't my principles. I mean, I didn't invent this stuff. This is just, this goes back to when the Bodhi tree opened. That's when I started discovering this stuff. Yeah, you remember that? So anyway, then what can happen, an idea can come to you at the most unknown time. It can just, anything. Somebody can say something. It can come from the outside world. You're attracting it. You are going to attract whatever you're feeling. So if you're really enthusiastic and you have that feeling of expectancy, it can arise in you as an inspiration. Somebody can say something that can trigger something. The outside world can bring something to you. And if you're in that frame of mind of expectancy, you will recognize it, because they're always there. You're just not recognizing them. Because the other thing, the back door, is saying, no, 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 you can't do this. You're not, whatever. Fill in the blank. If you can hear yourself saying those things, then you're no longer the one saying them. Okay, I know I'm... okay.
No,
you asked me to come. So.
I asked you, listen. Very good. Very good.
And practice your scales and use a condom. I was one of these guys that was very interested in doing exercises and scales, very rote, I had all my scales, and I'd had them, what I was going to do every day, and for 1 hour I did exercises, and I'd develop all these crazy exercises, and then some would be picking, some would be flutters. I mean, I would just sit there and go like this as long as I could till my finger fell off. It's really great because it really develops your strength, and then I would do it with these. I would do it with these fingers, like this, and then like this, and then like that, 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 and then like that. And it was so easy to intellectualize, and then like this, and then like this, and boy, I can't wait, and I'm going to start really slow. And so I was really excited. So for me, I wanted to be able to play really well. I liked sitting and practicing a lot. And I loved scales. I loved knowing them. I loved the tone of them. It wasn't just the scale. Scales are boring. It's the sound. It's the colors they introduce. I understood how to use the colors, and I liked knowing what they were, So for me, the technique of practicing scales was useful. Was really useful. But I have to say, you don't have to sit and practice. For me, 9 hours a day was the least that I could get away with without feeling miserable. So crazy I was. But you don't have to do that if you're not compelled to do it. You should never. You can't. You can't do it if you don't want to do it. I never had any discipline. People say, oh, you must have had so much discipline. I have no discipline. I can only do what I want. And to stop playing took discipline. You know what I mean? So if you sit there and tell yourself, okay, now I have to sit down and I have to do this, and you're doing it and you're not feeling good, that's going to flow into what you play. I'm going to talk about being able to listen, what it means to listen, because it has very many levels to it. One of the greatest discoveries I made later in my career, unfortunately was later, was being able to listen to what I'm playing while I'm playing. I know that sounds peculiar, but most of the time, at least for me, I was caught in the mental gymnastics of what my fingers could do and what theoretically worked, And sure, there was some nice stuff that came out sometimes, but it wasn't until I was a young adult that I started to listen. And if you try this, there's this very elusive frame of mind when you're playing, and especially improvising, when you're actually not thinking. You're just paying attention, like intense attention. Paying attention is higher than thinking. And if you're watching what you're doing and paying attention and listening, you can actually hear what you want yourself to play. It might sound bizarre. But you can actually start then, you allow what's going to come out, and you're hearing it, and you have more control over it. You have more of an ability to shape what you're doing, as opposed to thinking about what to play and trying to figure out what's going to work. Now, maybe that's, some of you might understand that. Maybe it's something you put on the shelf till later, but try it. And one way to identify this is, I highly recommend always recording yourself and listening back. Because when you listen back, you're hearing from a whole different perspective. Because when you're playing, you're in it, most of the time you're in your mind. But when you listen back, if you can listen and be critical, but not negatively critical, because you can listen back and go, oh my God, that sucks, I suck, how this just sounds like hell, I'm never going to amount to anything. You start spinning a story about it, you're done, But can you listen and go, okay, just without prejudice, listen without criticizing. The word I should have used before was critique. Can you listen without building a story in your head about it? But say, okay, well, I hear that. How can I improve this? How would I like this to sound? There's something that's kind of nice. You know what I mean? This is a great way to improve your playing. But melodies can only come when you listen to your inner ear. You listen to the voice in you that speaks the melodies. There's music in you, and the development of your inner ear is of vital importance. It's more important than the scales. It's more important than being a rock star. It's more important, well, maybe for some, but if you really want to find that zone of, the real sweet spot is when you feel something and you hear something and you can perform it, or you can write it down. That is delicious. That is beautiful. And you have to develop the ability to listen without thinking. And that's when these things arise. That's the only time they can arise. So you can also do this with people. In an environment when you're performing with somebody, when you're playing. I mean, how many times do you jam? I've jammed with so many people, and some people are brick walls, They have no idea what you're doing. They don't care. They're not listening to what you're doing. They're not responding in that beautiful, intimate environment that you create when you're communicating, that very vulnerable environment. So, and then there's guys that just have giant ears, and when you play, they're just on everything. And they're not criticizing you. They're not, thinking, if you're listening to somebody and you're playing with them and you're thinking, well, that's a cool riff, I'll have to steal that, or boy, he's much better than me at that. I don't know if I should. This is the mind. This isn't the attention. If you're paying attention to what somebody is doing, you can't think. And that's when the beauty starts happening, because it's an exchange. There's no criticism there. And you can do this with people. When you talk to somebody, actually listen to them without judging them.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Forgive me if I'm still forming the question. To what degree of importance does being vocally active have with your musical vocabulary when you play?
To be vocally active?
To sing when you play.
Oh, to sing when I play. You mean sing what I'm playing?
How important is it when
It's a great exercise. It's really wonderful because, like I was saying, the good stuff comes from your inner ear. It comes from the inspiration, from your soul, whatever, the infinite. And to capture it and bring it onto your instrument, you got to develop your ears. Some people have already come into the world with a high degree of musicality. I had to work very hard on my ears, and there was many exercises that I did that sometimes were painful, but I knew that they would help. And singing what I played was really helpful. And I highly recommend it. You got to be able to do that. You have to be able to connect your fingers with your inspiration. And it's very simple. You start just by singing simple stuff, and then you start adding more complex things. And like anything else, I made a forensic science out of it. I started singing harmonies to what I would play. You know, I mean, if you can just play and sing a fifth or a fourth or a minor third or a minor second, which I was crazy enough to try, that's really going to bring you into a new dimension of your playing. These are different techniques than just, it's important to practice and get your chops together and develop the vessel. But you have, if you really want to discover your inner music, and some of you it might already be there, the ears are very, very transparent, boom, just comes right out. I have friends, I've had students, phenomenal, this bam, 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 the ears that I can't believe, it's beautiful. A couple of things that I would also recommend that are unbelievably helpful. Try to sing a note and then play it. And then sing another note just from the interval and then play it. And then that's really very hard, If you can do that, that's a big boy game. But one of the things that I love to do, I was doing this last night. I couldn't sleep a little bit, and I actually enjoy when I can't sleep, because I can sit there and just listen in my head. And this is something you can try. Now, if you can stick with it, because it can be difficult and frustrating at first, you imagine that you're playing, but you hear what you're playing and you see it, you watch it on the fingerboard in your mind. Now, you'd be surprised to discover how much of what you do is rote finger exercises, and not connected with your attention of your inner ear. So by doing that, and it might start with just 2 notes, just take those 2 notes, and if many of you can see yourself singing a major second, da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, and you just picture it, and you make music out of it. Freedom, no thinking, just make music out of it, and then you add a note, a third or something. If you do this, you will be playing your instrument without your instrument, and there's this freedom then. That's how I come up with a lot of stuff. I imagine it, and what happens, you can imagine stuff that you can't play, and then you have to work on it. So that's developing your ear, singing what you play. It starts with that. That's the simplest. It doesn't matter what you decide to do. What matters is how you align yourself with your decision. And what I mean by that is, if you say, well, should I go to MI, or should I just go right to putting a band together and trying to make it? I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know which decision. If I do this, okay, and then there's stress. Okay, so if you know that it doesn't matter what you do, what matters is how you align yourself with it. So you decide that you want to go to MI. You get excited about that. Enjoy the idea and the process of preparing, of meeting other people, of enjoying being here and learning, and being in Los Angeles, a great city. I mean, Hollywood, it's changed so much. I was just driving down, I'm like, wow, this is sure different than it was 25 years. It's cool, There's so much, and you're young. You're leaving home for the first time, being independent. This is all really great stuff that when you look back, but what am I going to do? I'm alone. Okay, so you need to figure out how to align yourself and feel about any decision you make, because it doesn't matter what you decide. Because if you make the decision, and this is a hypothetical situation, to go to MI, but you were like, oh, I don't know, and insecure about it, and not aligning yourself and saying, this is what I decided. I didn't decide to do that, so forget it. You can question your decision for the rest of your life. Oh, if I only would have walked up to that girl and said something, if I only would have. Why didn't I do this? What would have happened? It's a waste of time. It's useless, and it's just mind shit, And so can you align yourself with whatever decision you decide to make? And forget about the other decision. It doesn't exist anymore. Right. And maybe it'll come back around, and then you align yourself with that. It's accepting what is.
One more time. Thanks to the amazing Steve Vai.